Coming up this week, we're going to put on our tinfoil hats and talk about some conspiracy behind the passing of the Inflation Reduction Act. Lucid debuts the Air Sapphire. Dodge wants to make loud EVs and more. Well, hello, friends, and welcome to episode 118 of the EV Resource Podcast. I'm Zach Hurst, and each week I bring you the latest EV news, information, and interviews with industry experts. Before we get started with the news this week, I want to remind you that the Electric Vehicle Fall Festival is less than a month away, taking place September 18th from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. at Dominion Raceway in Central Virginia. It's about an hour south of D.C., an hour north of Richmond. It is a great location. The EV owner-supported Electric Vehicle Fall Festival returns to Dominion Raceway to give EV owners and non-owners alike the opportunity to have the most fun with these cars in a safe and legal environment. Members of the public who haven't made the shift to being an EV owner yet will experience a variety of different EV makes and models. These attendees will be able to take rides around the track in owner-provided vehicles and speak with our many vendors and EV owners to get a more rounded understanding of EV ownership. The goal is simple: affect change in the mind and encourage EV adoption to those who haven't made the shift yet. EV owners who attend the EV Fall Festival will have a different experience. For these very important people, they will have the opportunity to enter their EV in a car show, which will be judged by members of the public, drive at speed around the 2-mile Dominion Raceway road course, and launch down the 8th-mile drag strip. For EV owners, we want a day packed with thrill and excitement of EV performance. EV owners will also be encouraged to sign up to be an EV ambassador and share their experience of EV ownership with other non-owner attendees. If you are curious, or if you know somebody who's curious about EVs, haven't experienced an EV yet, or if you're a longtime owner, we're going to have something for everyone. What we want more than anything is for the people who attend to leave with a smile on their face that is hard to wipe off, and I'm pretty sure that's exactly what's going to happen. General admission for the event is just $15 with separate pricing for track activities. For tickets and more information, go to electricvehiclefest.com, or you can go on the EV Resource or Electric Vehicle Fall Festival Facebook pages. It's going to be easy to find, but, electricvehiclefest.com, that's probably the easiest. I also want to thank our long-standing podcast partner, Titan Auto and Tire, for their support. Titan has 3 locations in Central Virginia to serve your EV and hybrid maintenance and repair needs, and they're special because they make sure their technicians are qualified to work on these vehicles, so you can trust your car to be in capable hands. From hybrids to Hummers, they fix everything. I take my personal cars to them, and I definitely recommend if you live in the greater Richmond, Virginia area, check them out too. For more information and to schedule an appointment for your vehicle, head over to TitanAutoTire.com. That's TitanAutoTire.com. All right, we've had some time to digest, maybe, the EV tax credit mess contained within the Inflation Reduction Act. And if you'll recall, the last time we were talking about this, it was very unclear which vehicles would qualify for the credit and which would not. The bill itself is utterly confusing, and it's no surprise that even the experts have had to take some time to figure out exactly what's going on here. I myself have looked at the original text of the bill, and wow, let me tell you, it's not a surprise that this is just confusing for everybody. And of course, the biggest question on everyone's mind is what EVs will actually qualify for the incentives and which vehicles are left out. Short answer is we don't really know. And I'll get to more of that in a bit here. But to recap first, there are a few qualifications an automaker must hit in order for an EV or plug-in hybrid EV to qualify, or rather a bunch of disqualifications. It's actually funny, as I'm recording this, I realized that figuring this out is almost like playing the kids' game Guess Who. You remember that game? You've got 3 rows of men and women, different characters with different hairstyles and eye colors, and you have to guess which character your opponent has by asking a bunch of qualifying or disqualifying questions to narrow down the field until eventually you get basically the answer you're seeking. Well, this tax credit part of the Inflation Reduction Act bill has me doing the same thing. So first, there is a price cap, which we did mention last time. Any car above $55,000 or SUV, truck, or van above $80,000 automatically doesn't qualify. So knock down half the players on the board. Of the remaining vehicles, eligibility for the $7,500 tax credit has been split in half, with each half of the tax credit needing to meet specific qualifications. Both halves are tied to battery manufacturing, and vehicles outside of North America aren't eligible. And that part of it, while the majority of the bill takes effect January 1st, 2023, so we have some time until next year, if a vehicle is built and assembled, like final assembly, outside of North America, it does not qualify starting now, as soon as the bill was signed. As I understand it, those vehicles no longer qualify for the existing tax credit starting now, which is kind of bullshit. Excuse me. Both halves, as I mentioned, are tied to battery manufacturing. So here's a breakdown of those two major points. $3,750, half of that $7,500 of the credit eligibility, is based on battery manufacturing content, the minerals of the battery. For next year, 2023, EV batteries must have at least 40% of battery parts and materials sourced and made in the U.S. or with a country that the United States has a free trade agreement with. This will ratchet up 10% each following year, starting in 2024, reaching 100% by 2029. So that's half of it. The other half, the other $3,750 of the credit eligibility, is based on the battery's assembly location, and it must be assembled in North America. So in theory, Tesla vehicles, like we'll take the Model 3, the battery minerals for the Model 3 are not sourced from the United States or a country that we have a free trade agreement with. But I believe the final battery assembly is here in North America. So it would be eligible for $3,750, but not the other $3,750. Maybe. As long as it's less than $55,000 and is assembled in North America, which of course we know Fremont or now Austin for the Model Y, they're assembled here. Oh, yes, it's that confusing. As I mentioned, the changes for the new laws will be implemented mostly in January 1st of next year. The Made in North America caveat went into effect immediately, covered that. With this change, immediately as soon as it was signed into law, tons of cars became ineligible for tax credits literally overnight. So when the bill was signed, the Made in North America clause automatically stripped any EV made outside of North America of its eligibility for tax credits. The ruling was abrupt, so some reservation holders and those waiting for their EVs to arrive from the factory may have unwillingly become ineligible for the credit that they thought they were qualified for. So think of it this way. You could have ordered a car maybe even a year ago under the assumption that you were going to get a $7,500 tax credit, and that might have been part of your decision to get whatever vehicle you were looking for. And without that credit, you might not be able to afford it. Well, guess what? Surprise. Now you're not going to get that. This is crazy. The IRS actually says that EV buyers awaiting a vehicle who entered into a binding purchase contract would be grandfathered in under the old tax credit scheme. But if you didn't sign final paperwork promising to purchase the specific vehicle, like a simple reservation holding your place in line does not count. This is just I laugh because otherwise I would cry. Honestly, this is just ridiculous. And of course, the question still remains: which vehicles qualify and which vehicles do not? Well, the parts of the bill that mention price, that much is easy to understand. If the vehicle is more expensive than those two limiting tiers, then it's not going to qualify no matter what. The Lucid Air is a great example. Nothing that Lucid makes is going to qualify for the tax credit. So because they are built in North America, I believe there's still going to be a tax credit on those through the end of the year, as I understand it. But I'm not sure I really understand. I really understand this. And I've read through the original text twice. I've read many articles about this from many different sources, and mostly people tend to have a general understanding. But the battery material percentages, honestly, that's tough. Most people don't know where the materials from their battery packs come from. I mean, there's a few that are known, like Tesla, as an example, source most of their materials from outside of North America. So where does this lead us exactly? I mean, there is a list on the Alternative Fuels Data Center website, and I will put the link to that in the show notes, that list currently vehicles that are final assembly is in North America. That much is listed, so that much we know. But outside of that, I mean, when this does go into effect, you're going to have no Lucid vehicles, no Rivians, most of the Teslas, no Porsche Taycan, most of Audi's EV offerings. I mean, a couple of their plug-in hybrids might qualify. No Hyundai Motor Group vehicles, so that's Hyundai, Kia, and Genesis, because they're all made outside of the U.S. Polestar's out because they're made in China. Some of GM's vehicles will not qualify, like the Hummer, of course, because it's too expensive. Probably the Silverado, like the upper trim levels, won't qualify. Of course, the Bolt EV and EUV should qualify, I think. I don't know. And here's the kicker. All of Toyota's plug-in hybrids are still in the running, which, of course, that's what Toyota wants to sell. They don't want to sell EVs. They want to sell plug-in hybrids. The BZ4X does not qualify for the tax credit, and I'm sure Toyota does not mind that. And there's a lot of others. The list, honestly, is just way too long to touch on, and I'm sure I'm going to forget about a bunch, which, honestly, that's a good thing, because that means there's a ton of EV and plug-in hybrid options available. But what I want to talk about, and this is putting the tinfoil hat on, what I want to talk about is Toyota. And I have to give a shout out to Joe Boras. Originally, I heard this idea come out of his mouth on the Clean Technica podcast, the Clean Tech Talk podcast by Clean Technica. And then, of course, if you listen to Electrify News podcast, Joe's on that, and he's mentioned that there as well. Something very interesting about this whole process. If you go back to the original chatter about revising the EV tax credit, it was a part of the Build Back Better plan. But if you remember, that got shot down by West Virginia Representative Joe Manchin. Well, Joe Manchin was very involved with the writing of the wording in this new bill as a part of the Inflation Reduction Act. And in order for him to vote yes, the wording was made sure to mention that the battery in the vehicles must be at least 7 kilowatt hours, which that's a really small battery. I mean, that's less than half the size of what's in my Spark EV. So obviously targeting plug-in hybrids. And what company makes the majority of plug-in hybrids that have ever been sold? And they also have a battery pack that's just a little bit bigger than 7 kilowatt hours. That's right, Toyota. What company committed a $240 million investment for hybrid production line in a West Virginia manufacturing plant? You'll probably guess that one too, Toyota. Which company has been lobbying heavily to modify the previous tax credit bill and had just hit their 200,000 vehicle cap? Yep, you're probably right again. Now, I'm not saying that there's a connection here because this is very speculative. That's why I'm framing this as a conspiracy theory. But I'm definitely saying that there might be a connection. I'm not saying there isn't one. Let's put it that way. I'm not saying there is, but I'm not saying there isn't either. And if you pay attention to the bills that pass and get written into law, the legislation that the people want, that the constituents would vote for, usually don't influence what Congress does one way or the other. If a bill is something that we really want, it's got a same percentage chance of passing than a bill that we wouldn't want to pass. But data has shown, and I think it was, oh my goodness, Jennifer Lawrence with Represent US, I think was a video that I saw. I have to double check that. But if you look at the data, here's where it's interesting. The corporate lobbyists, if they want a bill passed, it has an almost 100% chance of passing. And if they don't want a bill passed, it has a 0% chance of passing. And the line on the graph, if you follow it based on their desires and the chance of a bill passing, it almost follows that identically. So this could be Toyota, and basically Manchin being one that is kind of obviously was influential. This new tax credit bill really seems like it's tailored to benefit Toyota and their desire to sell as many plug-in hybrid vehicles as possible. It just works so well for them. They are one of the winners when it comes to this tax credit bill. Okay, so enough of that. Okay, enough of that. I'm going to hop down off the soapbox and remove my tinfoil hat and on to a happy story about the future. The future. Hey, I'm trying to record a podcast here. Do you mind? Okay, as I was saying, a story about the future of Dodge and their vision for electric vehicles has taken a rather dramatic shift from the rest of the industry, as you might have just noticed. What you heard interrupting me was the Dodge Charger Daytona SRT Banshee electric muscle car revving its quote-unquote engine or something like that. Actually, what's interesting about this, as the company says, they say, quote, while most BEVs embrace their virtually silent electric motors, that just wouldn't do for a Dodge. The Charger Daytona SRT concept voices a 126 decibel roar that equals the SRT Hellcat, generated through a new patent-pending Fratsonic chambered exhaust system. Yes, Dodge added an exhaust to an electric vehicle, end quote. So the technology is actually kind of interesting. There's an air pump that blows air through like an exhaust system on this car. So as a tech geek kind of guy, like, that's cool. All right, I think there's something to that. That's nice. But that reaction is not what I've seen from other people. And I've seen basically two main sides of this. The traditional muscle car automotive purist who hates EVs and wants a real, quote unquote, real engine. They aren't too thrilled about this. They think it's a bunch of BS. And it's interesting that the EV purists who want a quiet car agree with them. Those are the two sides that I've seen. What I haven't seen yet is people like me who think this is kind of cool, and I like the idea. I mean, this day and age, you have to do something different, especially if you're Dodge. I mean, the brand of the company is just so dependent on the muscle car people. So, you know, you got to go EV at this point. I mean, everybody's going EV. If Dodge doesn't go EV, then they're going to be left behind. And I think they realize that, but they kind of painted themselves into a corner. So this is dumb. This exhaust on an EV, this is very dumb. And I will admit that. But you can like dumb things, right? I mean, I still like the original Fast and Furious movie. That was dumb, but very cool. This is kind of like that. Dumb because it doesn't seem like anybody really wants it. And honestly, making an EV sound like something it isn't, that's kind of dumb. But still, there's something about this that pulls me in. I like it. And the longer I think about it, I really like it. The one thing I've always wanted to do if I pull up to a traffic light and there's somebody next to me that I'm like, all right, they want to race. I want to race. I'm in an EV. I'm going to blow the doors off them. how do I let them know that I want to race? Well, typically, if you're in a gas-powered car, you'd rev the engine. Most EVs don't have that ability. Guess what? This one does. You could pull up to a line and rev at somebody, and loudly. I mean, really, really loudly. 126 decibels. That is really, really loud. I think the limit for legal cars on the road is 90, 95 decibels, something like that. Your exhaust can't be louder than that, or you might get a ticket depending on what state you live in. So this is just excessive. And if there's anybody that can get away with this, I think it would be Dodge. So I don't know. I want to drive one. Honestly, I want to see this in person. I want to drive it as soon as possible. So if anybody knows somebody at Dodge and you can connect me, let's make this happen, okay? Next, another car that I would drop everything at the chance to drive. Lucid, the makers of the hyper luxurious, super efficient, extremely powerful electric vehicles, has made an EV that is more of all of that. That's it, just more. Lucid just launched the Air Sapphire, the long-awaited three-motor or tri-motor variant of the Air. The Sapphire also marks the release of a new performance arm for Lucid. As you might have guessed, the company is naming it Sapphire. With the arrival of the Air Sapphire, the Tesla Model S Plaid now has a direct rival. The only EV, or really only production vehicle, ever to be quicker in acceleration and in the quarter mile than the Model S Plaid was the Rimac Nevera. Well, this, if all of the specs, the things that Lucid will say the Sapphire will do, if they're all correct, then Tesla's going to need to come up with an update on the Model S Plaid in order to compete. Lucid says the Sapphire will do 0 to 60 in less than 2 seconds, which, if you have been paying attention to how quickly cars accelerate, there is a certain physical limitation that 2-second barrier was thought to be impossible to be quicker than that. Well, obviously, Tesla can do it with a 1-foot rollout, which, depending on who you talk to, is considered cheating. The Rimac Nevera is I believe, a 1.85 0 to 60. And I don't know if that includes a 1-foot rollout or not. But, either way, this is going to be close. 0 to 60 in less than 2 seconds, 0 to 100 in less than 4 seconds, and Lucid say it'll rip through the quarter mile in less than 9. So should those numbers hold up, it would be quicker than the Model S Plaid, and that is no small feat. I mean, that you got to give credit to the company for being able to do that. And to the important part, let's talk about money. Because this is one where Tesla has a massive advantage over Lucid. The Tesla Model S Plaid starts at just shy of $138,000, and that's not including the 21-inch wheels, which I believe are an extra $4,500, or the $20,000 brake upgrade kit that gives you, honestly, the brakes the car should come with. I mean, Tesla should sell that car for $160,000 and just include the carbon ceramic brakes, because if you have over 1,000 horsepower that's accelerating you to 165 miles an hour in a quarter mile, you need to be able to brake. And one of the biggest criticisms most people have of the Plaid is the brakes. They're just not that great. So upgrade the brakes, sell it, including the carbon ceramic brakes. That's what Lucid's doing. They are going to have carbon ceramic brakes included with the price, but their price is a little bit more than 160 or 150 or even more than 200. They're starting their price at $249,000. And at the end of the day, that's a lot of money for really any sedan, much less the most powerful sedan in the world. Oh, I forgot to mention, I completely skipped over it. It's going to make 1,200 horsepower, over 1,200 horsepower. So once again, the most powerful production sedan in the world will be the Lucid Air Sapphire. But here's the thing. If you compare to other than the Plaid to any other vehicle in the world that has the ability to do that, you're not going to get performance out of anything, much less a sedan, but anything, unless you spend millions of dollars. I mean, the Rimac that I mentioned, I think, is $2.5 million. So for $250,000, honestly, this is kind of a steal. And with Lucid, you're going to have that refined luxury that's built into the car that you're just not going to get with Tesla. I mean, Tesla has done amazing things when it comes to unlocking performance for the price, but you're not going to get anything else. I mean, you're going to get Tesla typical build quality, which is great. I mean, I don't see anything wrong with Tesla's build quality, but you have to understand it's not what you're going to get when you buy a Lucid. So if you've got the money, I would say buy both and then just drag race them nonstop all day long and make videos, and you'll pay off both with the money you make from those videos quickly. So, there's an idea. Maybe I should do that. What do you guys think? What do you think in general about, these cars? It's extreme, isn't it? Like 1,200 horsepower in a car that you can just buy and drive your family around. Like, where does this end? It's just getting crazy. I love it. I absolutely love it. It's absolutely crazy. And more performance. The next story I've got for you, granted, it's not 1,200 horsepower. Kia has announced U.S. market details for its quickest and most powerful EV6 GT model. Rated at 576 horsepower, the 2023 Kia EV6 GT, and side note, not to be confused with the GT line that is already out, because that one's actually slower. This is the EV6 GT. Acceleration and top speed numbers will beat the Tesla Model Y performance just barely, although Kia hasn't confirmed range or sticker price yet for the model. In US spec form, those official performance numbers are 0 to 60 in 3.4 seconds and a top speed of 161 miles an hour. Good enough. Kia actually says it will out-accelerate the Ferrari Roma and the Lamborghini Huracan Evo. It's also, as I mentioned, better than the Tesla Model Y's performance numbers, which the Model Y performance is rated at 3.5 seconds to 60 and 155 mile an hour top speed. And when I tested the Model Y performance, I'm able to confirm both of those. In fact, the 3.5 seconds 0 to 60, I was able to hit that from a standing still on the shoulder of a highway. And the shoulder is not a prepared track. I mean, it's got gravel and things. So that 3.5 seconds 0 to 60 on the Model Y performance, it's legit. I mean, I think I got quarter mile in 12 flat at 115. And then on to 155 miles an hour top speed. I can confirm all of those numbers for the Model Y performance. So for this to be rated a little bit faster, that's great. Tesla needs more competition. I support this. The GT pairs a 160 kilowatt front motor and a 270 kilowatt rear motor for a combined output of 430 kilowatts, which, of course, that's where you get that 576 horsepower number, and a combined torque rating of 546 pound-feet. Upgrades for the GT include a dedicated sport suspension with dynamic dampening control. The electronic limited-slip rear differential helps direct torque to wheels with more grip. That should also help torque vectoring if you're going to track this. I didn't see anything specifically pointing that out, but I have a feeling about it. It is going to have larger ventilated front and rear disc brakes and Z-rated Goodyear Eagle F1 tires to give this model what it needs to deal with that extra power. On the outside, the GT gets a rear aero spoiler, 21-inch alloy wheels with neon-accented brake calipers, and a unique lower front and rear styling that emphasizes the width. Inside, the GT gets suede-trimmed performance front bucket seats with green piping and ambient lighting in its own striped motif. In addition to the Eco, Normal, Sport, and Snow drive modes you'll find throughout the EV6 lineup, The GT adds a GT drive mode that optimizes the behavior of the motors, brakes, steering, suspension, electronic limited slip, and stability systems to maximize performance. There's also a My Drive mode, so whoever's driving or owns the car or whatever, you can pick and choose how you want the car to behave and save that as your own drive mode, which that's really cool. That's like driving game stuff, like where you can set it up and save it. I mean, I love it. I absolutely love it. I lost my place. I'm trying to read. Oh, a drift mode, which will just send all the power to the rear wheels. And I think some outlets have gotten the reporting on that wrong. They have said that you will be able to get all of the 576 horsepower in the rear. But I don't see how that's possible because the rear is only at 270 kilowatts, which granted, that's 361 horsepower or so, which is plenty, but that's not near the 576. So just expect that if you put it in drift mode and only have power going to the rear wheels, that that amount of that power is not going to be the full amount. And what else? Oh, okay. So Kia EV6. Kia says that the EV6 GT will be available at U.S. dealerships starting in the fourth quarter of this year. It is estimating a 206-mile range for the GT, but that has yet to be confirmed by the EPA. And honestly, that would be significantly below the 274 miles that the dual-motor EV6 gets with the same battery pack. So Kia has not said what the EV6 GT will cost in the U.S., so expect that probably to come soon if they plan on having this sold by the end of the year. Other than that, the only other story I really wanted to mention, this is just very briefly, is that Polestar has announced that the O2 concept, their roadster, powerful kind of halo car for them, they are going to produce that. It's going to be produced as the Polestar 6. So if you've got some crazy money and you want a really good looking powerful roadster, then you should get that. That will be available, they say, in 2026, so maybe a few years before the Tesla Roadster. No, I'm kidding. Who knows when the Tesla Roadster will be out? In 2 weeks, I guess. All right, so that is it for this week. I want to thank you for listening. Go ahead and share this with your friends or anybody you run into that's interested in electric vehicles. If you want to listen to any of the previous podcast shows, you can find them on the webpage under the podcast section and on most of the major podcast platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, which most of you listen to this on Apple Podcasts, but it's also on Google Podcasts and Stitcher. I mean, a whole bunch. I don't even know all of them, honestly, because it goes out to all of the podcast platforms automatically. Like, I don't have to upload it directly to each one. So you might listen to this on a podcast platform I've never heard of before, and that's quite all right. But regardless of how you listen, share it with somebody else so that they can listen too. Of course, if you want more EV resource content, I encourage you to check out the YouTube channel. This does go up on YouTube audio only. So if that tickles your fancy, you can do that as well. And if you want your EV content in print, you can check out the monthly magazine of the EV Resource Magazine, digital. So it's not printed out, but you can get it delivered to you in your email. And I want to thank our Patreon supporters, of course. Tiers start at just $5, and that will give you perks like having your name mentioned on the podcast, access to the EV Resource monthly water cooler chat, which is something I started last month. A special thank you to our supporters on the executive producer tier, which, of course, they get their names read out every podcast episode. That would be Rajeev, Narayan, and Chris Lawrence. Thank you to them. I invite your feedback via email to hello@ev-resource.com. And that's all for this podcast. So thank you so much for being with me, and I will catch you next week.